This is the Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro Podcast, the neurohacking show where we teach you how to optimize your cognition. Keep up to date at roscoeswetsuitneuro.com. Now here's your host, Toby Passman.
All right, welcome everyone to a new episode of the Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro Podcast. We have a special guest with us on the show today, Shahin Najak. Shahin, we're going to introduce her in just a moment, but before we do that, Shahin is going to tell us why we should listen to the episode today.
What a beautiful question. Well, why should you listen to the episode today? Do you want to be on your own side? Being on our own side. Who do we have the most power and control over? Sometimes we think it's those around us, but it really isn't. It's on our future self. And what our future self looks like depends on us. So mindfulness brings to light that future self. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be the same person today as I was? Do I want to be the same person 10 years from now as I am today? Or do I want to change? Do I want to feel differently? Do I want to be slightly different than how I am today? Or do I want that routine life that I'm living right now? So if that appeals to you, tune in.
All right. And as you guys may have been able to infer, we are going to be talking about mindfulness meditation. Shahin is a certified mindfulness meditation coach for parents, teachers, and caregivers who have lost their joy. Shahin helps her clients release the overwhelm of frustration and exhaustion that can come from caring for others. Her passion lies in supporting adults and children, particularly parents and teenagers, in bringing back the spark, building better relationships using mindfulness skills to improve self-esteem and self-acceptance. So Shahin, super excited to have you with us on the show today.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So tell me a little about how you first got introduced to mindfulness. Can you recall the specific time period or just where you were at in your life?
Absolutely. So I've had a practice of meditation for over 20 years. So I would meditate and then I would get on with my day. So that daily living mindfulness wasn't a part of it. And then what happened was I went through a divorce that was quite shocking and numbing to my system. And I have two daughters. And all of a sudden, I was in this midst of chaos. And what my body really needed was calm. And I just did not know how to do this. So I started thinking about, what do I want for my daughters, right? If they experience chaos in their lives, what do I want for them going in their adult lives? And so I thought I would become a coach, a life coach. Maybe they didn't need that parent. Maybe they needed the coach in me. So I became a coach. And during my coaching journey, I started thinking back to what kept me resilient in my life. And doing a little bit of research, I realized that the mindfulness changes the brain. And so it was that was powerful. And I thought, I have to teach this to my kids, but I need to learn the daily mindfulness part for myself, other than the formal sitting meditation part of it. So I started learning about it. And as I started incorporating it into my life, before teaching it, in quotes, to my children, I noticed some subtle shifts started happening in my daily life. And as I noticed shifts happening in my life, I also noticed these powerful shifts happening in my relationship with my daughters. And that was my aha moment. I was like, there it is. I don't need to teach them. I'm being more mindful and just modeling it. And all of a sudden, our relationship started being just a little more deeper. Our connection was deeper. Our communication was more, was richer. And so I started really getting excited about it. And what excites me most is the informal mindfulness practices that we do on a daily basis, and allowing that formal sitting meditation practice to be scaffolded by the daily living, the informal practices.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because mindfulness and meditation, I feel like, are oftentimes just lumped together in the same category of like mindfulness meditation, and you're trying to figure out if someone's referring to sitting down on a cushion and doing an eyes closed meditation session, or whether they're talking about practicing just mindfulness throughout their day-to-day lives. So what were some of the differences in terms of the benefits that you noticed from when you started practicing mindfulness versus just traditional meditation?
Yeah, so what happened is the daily living mindfulness, I started incorporating small habits into my life, right? So one of the first things I did was I downloaded an app that would ding at every 2 hours, just to calm that monkey mind that we have, that that mind that goes from branch to branch to branch, and just to bring it back into that present, almost like if you can visualize an hourglass, that middle part of the hourglass, that's where I'm staying present and attentive. So how did I do that? Well, when I was filling up my water bottle, for example, I would take those deep breaths. When I started doing this frequently, when I was driving and I would stop at a stop sign or a red light, that was my cue to stop, to pause, take those deep breaths. And I was just activating my prefrontal cortex instead of, and taking that pressure away from the back of my brain, the amygdala, and resting that, and just zeroing in on that parasympathetic system, right? The rest and digest. So I started including a lot of those daily practices throughout the day, the breathing, practicing my pause. And then what I noticed a huge shift in my sitting meditation practice, the formal practice. When I sat, Thich Nhat Hanh says, no mud, no lotus. So we need to get through that mud, the daily life, the tasks, to-dos, the planning, the ruminating, the worries that we have. We need to get through that in order to get to the lotus, the richness. So what I found was the sitting practice, I was able to get in deeper, quicker. So for me, that daily mindfulness pausing that I did built a sense of, it was almost training my brain so that I was able to get in deeper in my meditations, in my sitting practice.
And you also mentioned that the mindfulness really changed your relationships with your children. Can you talk to me a little about what you noticed there?
Yeah, so there's this Buddhist story about the second dart. Have you heard about that story?
You're gonna have to remind me.
Okay, I'm gonna remind you. So things that happen, the events that happen to us, that's the first arrow. And when that first arrow hits, so for example, I fall, and that's the event. Then the second arrow is the things that happen after in the mind, right? So the things that happen are things like, why did I fall? I'm embarrassed that I fell. I should have looked where I was going. Oh my God, everybody's watching. These are the second arrow, third arrow, fourth arrow, fifth arrow. These are all the darts that happen. So for example, with my daughters, I come home, they haven't emptied the dishwasher, right? The first stage is that reaction. That reactionary brain that says, I cannot believe how you forgot to empty out the dishwasher again. So that complaining, the angry brain starts. What I noticed over time is there are 4 stages. And the second stage of it was, as soon as I got a little bit more mindful, I started noticing this realization that, I've been hijacked, that limbic hijack. I've been hijacked by my limbic brain. Can't help but get irritated and frustrated. I'm not as angry, but I can still feel myself grumbling and being irritated, keep telling and retelling the story over and over again. Then the third stage is, as we become more and more mindful, we can feel the reaction rising, like this hot bubble rising, but we don't act it out. It's like just that, oh, I can feel that, the inner body awareness of it. Oh, I feel it coming up. You can feel the irritation, but then the reminder is there saying, what was my intention? What is my intention for the connection that I want with my daughters or my partner or my family, whoever that may be? And that piece comes in. And then the fourth stage is, oh, doesn't matter. I will be mindful while I empty out the dishwasher. And that is my time with myself. So there's these 4 stages that happen during the course of the practice. And we just get deeper and deeper into it.
And what it sounds like you're talking about there is like, in psychology, they talk about like, where there's the stimulus, right? That there's some external event, and then people tend to think that stimulus is what caused their internal reactions. But really, as you're alluding to, I think as it's sort of explained in this Buddhist second arrow, where it's like, really, there's this space in between, there's this gap between the stimulus and your reaction. And so it's like the stimulus is occurring, say, I was just using this example the other day on the podcast, where it's like, say your boss yells at you, and then you feel bad, and then you feel terrible about yourself. Your boss isn't causing you to feel terrible about yourself. That's the stimulus. And then you're making certain internal representations, which is then leading to that experiencing feeling terrible.
Yeah, there's a beautiful quote by Viktor Frankl, and he writes it in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, I believe. He's a psychotherapist. He survived the Holocaust. And he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but within that space within that space lies our freedom. And that freedom is the choice. It's the choice to choose freedom within that space. So when stimulus happens, there's something happens, between the part where we react, we have this space where we can pause and say, is this the best thing for it? And there's another layer in it. And to really do some inner work, because there's more to mindfulness than just stopping and breathing, right? There's a little bit of inner work. Wow, what is it inside me that brought about this reaction? Why am I feeling so angry, irritated, and frustrated? What else is triggering me? And one of the things we notice is through mindfulness, we'll notice our habitual patterns of behavior, right? Habitual patterns of behavior that we have road rage, or, we're always frustrated with the person in front of us at Starbucks that's not moving fast enough. So what is that? What causes that? And can we allow ourselves just to be present with that feeling of discomfort and move towards that edge of discomfort? So you're with mindfulness, we're always moving to that edge of discomfort. So the mindfulness has 2 wings. One is the wing of mindfulness, of awareness. What's going on here? What's going on underneath this feeling? And then the other wing is the wing of compassion. Can I bring compassion to myself as I go through this feeling?
Okay. So then in terms of, when you're becoming more aware of these sort of, this sort of space in between stimulus and response, how do you go about then sort of, deciding in your mind as mindfulness, it sounds like, is sort of increasing the resources that your mind has in terms of choosing, which action or which thought maybe to indulge. How do you go about sort of I don't know, deciphering through that and figuring out then what to actually do?
Yeah, so that's a powerful question, because we don't just fall into mindfulness, right? We go in it with intention. Like, what is really my intention here? So when we wake up in the morning, it's like, I might say, what is my intention with how do I want my relationship to look? What do I want my relationship to look like with my daughters as they get older, right? As they turn into adults. So what does that relationship look like, and how do I want it to be? So that's my intention. That's my pathway. So with mindfulness, it's where your attention goes, where your intention lies, right? So when we choose how we're going to respond, that gives us that space to say, am I going to choose the trait that I'm feeling right now, this anger, irritated, overwhelmed trait, or am I going to choose the state that I want to be in? So moving from trait to state, because we often, how many of us know people that are always angry, always irritated, right? So that's kind of become their state. And when I said at the beginning, how can I be kind to myself, right? How do I show up as myself in my future self? So what do I want my state to be like at the end of this conversation, or at the end of this argument, or at the end of this interaction? Okay. And that helps us choose our response.
So it sounds like something that each person kind of has to figure out for themselves, what they really want, the outcome of situations, or what they want to bring and show up as in the world, for lack of better terminology.
Yeah, because one of the things about mindfulness is being present in this moment, right? And I remember I often say this to parents, but when my daughter was young, she said to me, she was having her first play date, and I said, okay, well, time flies when you're having fun. And she immediately stopped and looked at me. She was about 4. And she said, so I shouldn't have fun because time will fly. But what with mindfulness, because it does fly, right? As we're going through our day, if we're not present, then all of a sudden, before we know it, it's dinner time. And where has the day gone? And before you know it, the week has gone. Where did we spend our moments, right? Our rich, sweet moments. And so being really present to the moment, or there are so many opportunities during a day to be present in those moments, right? Brushing your teeth. One of the questions I ask is, how many people are in the shower with you, right? When we go to take a shower, the boss is there, or the computer emails are there that we have to respond to. What you said to somebody 2 days ago is there in your brain, right? All these people are in the shower. Can we just be present in that moment? And how much more would you feel like, this is my rest, this is my pause? How much better would we feel?
Sure, a lot better, I'm sure. that it reminds me of a past podcast guest who's talking about kind of our multiple selves, and how it's like there's all these different voices in our head, and it can become so challenging and so confusing, as you're saying. It's kind of like the boss, the conversation you're having with the boss, someone else, and it's just like, there's too many people in the shower. You need to get them out.
Yeah. One of your guests, and one thing that struck me was he was I think frozen before he was going to do a dance or something, and he just stopped, took a breath, and felt that embodied feeling. Because a lot of times our mind, our brain is disconnected from our body, right? Our body is here, but our brain is everywhere else in the world, wherever it takes us. And we unless we take control of it and lasso it back to our body and really feel that embodied feeling of what am I really feeling here, then we can break our triggers and our patterns of behavior that don't serve us.
Got it. So tell me about teaching. So you teach mindfulness to both parents along with children. And I'm really curious to hear just about, from, a child's brain, what mindfulness can do and how that can affect their behavior and probably, future behavior going forward as they emerge into adulthood.
Yeah, I actually I see it as a life skill. It really slows down and brings this awareness in them. So I run children's workshops, and I always integrate an art component to it. There's a mindfulness arts and crafts and games book on my website. You can download it for free. And those are all the activities that I've done all of them with kids that I've worked with. And of course, there's so many more. There was a summer camp that I was running, and there was a young boy there, and he was about 13. And at the beginning of the week, he was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then at the end of the week, he came up to me and he's like, Shahin, you know what? I never thought I would be into this mindfulness stuff, but I really like it. And we had gone down to the beach and made the mandalas. And so what it brings in them is this awareness of the other person that they're playing with or might be teasing. And it brings an awareness, because we talk about self-compassion and compassion for the other. And it also brings them an awareness of, when I'm angry, it's my alarm part of the brain that's just going out of control. So my smart part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is how I explain it to them, my smart part of the brain has the capacity to say to the alarm part of the brain, it's okay, I'm safe, I'm okay. And how do we access this smart part of the brain? It's by taking those deep breaths, slowing our systems down, and going, okay, what's happening? What's happening right now? And the other thing, in the world that we live in with all the digital technology, the phones, the games, what it does for them is when they go out to play and having gone through mindfulness and being aware that, the trees might be talking to you, the flowers might be bowing down to you and saying, hello, welcome. And it really brings that awareness as well. And it brings the awareness of, I can be kind to myself. And when I do feel my feelings, it's okay. It's okay to feel those feelings. I don't have to squash them down.
So it sounds like you're teaching these kids probably to have better emotional regulation skills than most adults can even have, right?
Absolutely.
Is there a certain age in which children kind of start developing the capacity to regulate their emotions or be mindful of what's going on internally? Like, have you found a certain age or level of maturity that they need to be at?
So when I've taught kids from the 6 to 9 age group, and then from the 9 to 12, and then the teen groups, the 6-year-olds are able to really process, oh, okay, I can breathe. I feel better when I take a breath. But the awareness of how I am to another comes about at the age 8, 9. just from my experience. I don't know what the neuroscientists say, but from my experience, from the 8-9 age group, they start really focusing on, oh, okay, I can, when I say this, I'm seeing how it affects the other person, or I can see how my words might not have landed that well. There's a balloon game in that mindfulness craft book that I talk about, where we're just, kids love balloons. We're, volleying the balloons up in the air. And if you notice, initially when kids play games, they always want to win. So the purpose of this game that people can play at home is, let's see if we can all collaborate and keep this balloon gently in the air. And so it's like a partnership, a relationship. Like research now shows, collaboration goes farther than competition.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, first, the children have to kind of develop the capacity to be aware of how their own internal states are functioning. But then once they develop some of that capacity, then they can start seeing how their actions and their states or behaviors are affecting others.
Yeah, they first get the words, right? So like Dan Siegel calls the limbic system the downstairs brain. This is the part of the brain where, okay, everything works. It's like the kitchen, the bathroom. So we eat, we digest, we breathe. And we also, that's the fight, flight, freeze response. So the alarm part of the brain is operating. So they start learning the words. Oh, okay, that was that alarm part of the brain. But my smart part of the brain, I can access it. I do have capacity. So, oh yeah, my smart part of the brain told me to breathe. So when they use the glitter jars that we make, they can watch their emotions in the glitter jar. Oh, okay, that's calming down. So they start using the language. But for parents, for example, with young kids, babies, they can start learning how to breathe from very young, 2-year-olds. You put a stuffy on their stomach and you watch their belly breathing, and they can see that, they get into the habit and the practicing that pause and that breath.
And I don't know if you specifically have tracked kind of any of the children that you've worked with as they've emerged into adulthood, or if you're aware of any of the research, if there is any research that has tracked kind of that progression. I mean, I would assume that that's got to result, like developing those kind of mindfulness skills at a young age has got to put those children like so far ahead, in terms of as they get into adulthood. I would think they'd be much better suited for the real world in terms of relationships, holding down a job, school. Like, it seems like everything would be a lot improved. Are you aware of much research surrounding that?
I haven't tracked personally, but what I have, I've looked at the research between anxiety and teens, and teens going through therapy, even adults going through therapy, and adding that mindfulness component to it. Their ability to calm themselves down and really be present in their relationships and their communication is vastly improved rather than just therapy itself. So when we add that component of mindfulness to it, it really does help them. And we know there's lots of research on kids who are athletes and they practice mindfulness. It just helps them be more focused, more present, more aware in the work they do.
And in terms of like the timeline here, I'm aware of like oftentimes it's like the standard, like the 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course. That's kind of just the format. But in terms of, clients that you've worked with, both maybe children and adults, how long do you start, how long does it take to start seeing, for people to start seeing real significant changes in in how they relate to themselves along with the world around them.
So I'll say this based on my experience, and I've run quite a few groups on mindfulness-based stress reduction. And currently I'm running 2 groups that are 12-week-long mindfulness programs. But for the 8-week program, I start noticing changes at the 5th and 6th weeks. And I can say this clearly with no hesitation. I've had people come in to the mindfulness classes at the beginning on the first week going, oh, I was so stressed. I'm just here. I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. I don't know what this is about, but I just don't know what to do anymore. And I feel so much baggage. By about the 5th week, they come in and we do a 5th week kind of a evaluation, feedback. How are you feeling now? And at that time they say, I feel like, do you remember when I used to come in feeling so heavy? I feel like I'm so much lighter. I've left all the baggage at your front door. And it's like, I'm just feeling so much lighter. So I start noticing it at the 4th, 5th, 6th week. And this is, with a caveat, is if they've been doing their mindfulness homework that we give them.
It also makes me think about, in terms of like neuroplasticity, which is kind of what's going on here, right? Where it's like you're harnessing the brain's ability to change and rewire itself through mindfulness in this case. And, children obviously don't have, like, they're still forming all of those pathways and connections, and they're, I feel like more, we know in the research, there's more neuroplasticity. Their brains are more plastic and malleable than adults. So I wonder just like how much, if this kind of work has even a more profound and powerful effect on their brains compared to adults.
Yeah, there has, I don't know if there's been much research done on children's brains per se from the last time I looked. But I'm going to definitely follow it up for the next time I'm on here. But what I often tell them is, you have more neurons in your brain than stars in the universe. So you can constantly fire and wire, and I forget who said that, but fire and wire the neurons together. And for adults, we're firing and wiring typically the same neurons together, but with mindfulness, they can choose a different path. And that neuroplasticity really plays that role to be a little different today, right? Say yes to something else today. Be a little more uncomfortable and check in with what's going on. What's the weather like inside today? But with kids, oh man, the field is wide open.
Right. That was what I was trying to get at. Exactly. How about in terms of like just lifestyle things, in terms of like the people's nutrition or exercise, sleep? Do all of these things have a role in terms of people's ability to kind of cultivate their mindfulness abilities?
So different it's like a snowball effect, right? So you start bringing mindfulness into your life and you start feeling a little bit better about yourself because you're like, oh yeah, I did notice the trees today, right? I was on a group call yesterday and we were talking about coping with loss. And one person said, oh, I just feel so sad and depressed when I think of this. But then I realized that, oh, I did have the opportunity to walk through a corn maze. And that brought some lightness in my heart. So we bring that into our life. So we start, because, we say that for every negative thing that we say or do to ourselves, or somebody says to us, we need 5 positive things, right? So we do this one positive breath that we take, and we notice something else, and we start bringing that into our lives. And guess what happens? We start feeling better about ourselves. And when we feel better about ourselves, we might start eating better. The other way might work too. Oh, I'm exercising more, I'm eating better. Oh, let me sit down for 5 minutes, right? So it's like it's like a to and fro situation, a yin yang. It just kind of melds together.
Right. Right. So in terms of like, as we kind of look towards the future, and, obviously mindfulness, I feel like, has really exploded, at least in Western society within, I don't know, the past like 5 to 10 years. I feel like there's just been this huge, media, presence of mindfulness and meditation. As we kind of look towards the future, how would you see mindfulness being kind of ideally incorporated into our society, maybe in certain ways that aren't being done yet? Or just if you were to be able to kind of play God and kind of do whatever you wanted in terms of getting mindfulness wherever it needed to go, what would that look like to you?
This is so I think a lot about this because mindfulness has become a buzzword. And do you remember the days when seatbelts weren't necessary? And we're going to an age where by 2030, I would say that mindfulness will become our proverbial seatbelts, right? It will just be a part and parcel of our lives. What I would like to bring a little bit of caution to is we live in a world where we're constantly going for something. And I would love to caution people to say, I don't want to kind of choose how we use mindfulness, like mindfulness not to be more productive, mindfulness not to be more focused at work so I can produce more, right? But really bring mindfulness into our lives so that we're increasing our relational capacity with each other, we're being more compassionate, self-compassionate, kinder to ourselves, to those around us, to nature itself, right? So bringing that part of it. And, when we see politicians argue with each other, I just wonder at what kids look and they say, oh, but we're supposed to be kind, right? And that mindfulness isn't there, that mindfulness communication isn't there, that you are me and I am you interchange isn't there. So I'm really wondering whether we can just broaden it a little bit, deepen it a little bit, and really bring that essence of mindfulness into our lives.
Right. I feel like, yeah, it's very hard to hate another person or to really be just so against their views if you're able to actually take a step back and try to do your best to understand like where they're coming from. Becomes a lot easier, I feel like, to get along with people and probably resolve a lot of the conflicts that are currently going on in our world. Probably would benefit a lot from those leaders, world leaders and politicians learning mindfulness skills. Well, Shahin, we're coming up onto the end of the show. But for people who, want to get started with mindfulness or find out about your work, connect with you, what sort of resources would you direct them to?
Well, send me an email. Go on my website. It's mindful-changes.com, or follow me on Instagram at mindful-changes4 with the number 4U. And I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes.
Yes.
If I've moved a dash here or there.
Absolutely. We will have
that.
that.
You'll find me Mindful Changes in Vancouver. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And for those listeners who enjoyed the show, first, I'd highly recommend you guys go check that out. And if you guys enjoyed the show, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro. You can also shoot me a DM on Instagram if you have any comments, questions, any suggestions for the show, any guests that you'd like to see on the show in the future. Go ahead and shoot me a DM on Instagram at Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro. And like and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform that you listen to it on, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other major platforms. We are on them all. So Shahin, I wanted to really thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of your knowledge and expertise with us today.
Thank you, Toby. Loved being here.
Awesome.
Wasting my time.
You just can't help yourself, can you?